She thought it was just another slow shift at the diner. Until a stranger in a designer suit walked in. And inside his wallet was a photo of her mother. A photo she had never seen. In the hands of a man she had never met. What followed was a journey across states, across decades, and deep into a past that had been hidden from her, until now. This isn't just a story about secrets. It's a story about truth, forgiveness, and the second chances we never see coming. Stay with us, because what starts as a quiet moment in a diner becomes a life-changing revelation. Brooke had never imagined her 20s would look like this. At 27, she spent most of her nights working the graveyard shift at a quiet roadside diner just outside Flagstaff, Arizona. The neon signs buzzed softly above the empty parking lot, and the hum of the fridge behind the counter was often the only sound that kept her company. Business had been slow for weeks. Tips were barely enough to cover gas, let alone rent. Every day felt like a silent battle, smiling at strangers while silently calculating how many shifts she'd need to avoid eviction. The stress was constant, but she never let it show. She just wiped down tables, poured coffee, and kept going. Then, one night, everything changed. A man walked in, tall, composed, and completely out of place. He wore a crisp navy suit and shoes that probably cost more than her paycheck. He didn't speak much. Just ordered a coffee and eggs over easy. But as Brooke rang up his bill and he pulled out his wallet, something inside her froze. There, tucked behind a few credit cards, was a photo she recognized instantly. It was a picture of her mother. Brooke's breath caught in her throat. She blinked, thinking maybe she imagined it. But no, the photo was unmistakable. Faded around the edges, the corners slightly curled. It was a picture of her mom, taken decades ago. The same one that used to sit on their mantle when Brooke was a kid. Her hand trembled as she handed him his change. "Where did you get that photo?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The man paused for a second, just long enough for her to notice, but then quickly tucked the wallet away and replied coolly, "Must be a coincidence." Brooke's heart pounded. That woman. That's my mother. He gave her a polite but distant smile, like she was confusing him with someone else. "I'm sorry, miss. You must be mistaken." And just like that, he turned, leaving a few bills on the counter, and walked toward the door. Brooke stood frozen behind the register, her mind spinning. Coincidence? No. She knew that photo. She knew him, even if she didn't know how yet. Something wasn't right. And she wasn't about to let it go. Brooke stood at the counter, staring at the door long after it closed behind him. Her instincts were screaming. That wasn't just some random stranger. And that photo wasn't there by accident. Without thinking, she untied her apron, tossed it under the counter, and pushed through the diner doors into the cool desert night. The man was already in the parking lot, heading toward a sleek black car that definitely didn't belong in this dusty little town. "Wait," she called out. He stopped, slowly turning around. His expression was unreadable, calm, almost too calm. "You need to tell me where you got that picture," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, though her heart was pounding. "I already told you," he said. "You're mistaken." Brooke stepped closer, refusing to back down. "That photo has been in my family for years. It's her. I know it is." For a second, he looked at her, really looked. There was something in his eyes. Recognition. Guilt. But just as quickly, it vanished. "I'm sorry," he said, quietly. "Good night." And then he got in his car and drove away, leaving Brooke standing alone under the buzzing street lamp, full of questions and no answers. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Brooke lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her tiny apartment, the image of that photo etched into her mind. Every detail was identical, the soft wave of her mother's hair, the necklace she never took off, the slight tilt of her smile. It wasn't a mistake. It was her. By morning, Brooke's confusion had hardened into determination. She grabbed her laptop, sat at the kitchen table with a mug of cold coffee, and started searching. After hours of digging, she found him. Thomas Calder. Founder and CEO of Calder Innovations. Billionaire. Tech visionary. Frequent guest on business networks. He lived in San Francisco, far from Brooke's dusty Arizona town, but his face, clean-shaven and perfectly composed, was the same one that sat in her diner just hours before. Her mind raced. What was a man like him doing there? Why would he have that photo? Nothing made sense. Her mother had lived a quiet life, never traveled, never talked about any wealthy connections. She had been a school nurse. Steady. Kind. Grounded. But now, Brooke couldn't ignore the truth. Her mother had a secret. And Thomas Calder was the key to unlocking it. The decision wasn't easy, but it felt inevitable. 3 days after the encounter, Brooke packed a small duffel bag, locked up her apartment, and boarded a Greyhound bus bound for San Francisco. She didn't have a real plan, barely had the cash for the trip, but the questions burned too hot to ignore. She couldn't focus at work, couldn't sleep, couldn't let it go. The city felt like another planet. Towering glass buildings, people rushing past with purpose, headphones in and eyes forward. Brooke, in her worn-out jeans and second-hand jacket, stood out more than she expected, but she didn't care. She was here for answers. She found the Calder Innovations headquarters in the heart of downtown. It was impossible to miss, an entire city block of steel and glass, the company's logo gleaming like it belonged on a spaceship. The front desk receptionist barely looked up. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Brooke said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "But I need to speak to Mr. Calder. It's personal." The woman gave her a tight, practiced smile. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Calder doesn't take walk-ins. I'm his daughter." The words came out before she even fully believed them. The receptionist blinked, finally giving Brooke a proper look. "Excuse me. I don't have proof," Brooke admitted. "But I need 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Security was called. A polite but firm man escorted her outside. She stood across the street afterward, watching the building, feeling the weight of embarrassment settle in. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe she was crazy. But then, something happened. A woman in a gray pantsuit, someone important, clearly, walked out of the building and glanced in Brooke's direction. Their eyes met briefly. The woman hesitated, then crossed the street. "You're the one asking for Thomas," she said. Brooke nodded. "I don't know what this is about," the woman continued, "but he saw you on the security feed. He said, let her in." Brooke followed her through the side entrance, past the glass lobby she'd been kicked out of earlier. Elevators whooshed silently to the top floors. Her heart pounded louder with each passing second. Finally, she was led to a private office, high above the city, quiet and sleek, with floor-to-ceiling windows and not a speck out of place. And there he was. Thomas Calder stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back. He turned slowly when he heard her enter. His face was calm, unreadable, just like before. Brooke didn't wait for permission. She stepped forward and said, "I need the truth. And I'm not leaving without it." Thomas Calder didn't move immediately. He studied her, as though weighing the decision of how much to say, or whether to say anything at all. Brooke stood there, her heart racing, her fists clenched by her sides. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. "You're much like her," he said, his voice low, but steady. "I see it now, in your eyes." Brooke flinched, the words hitting her like a punch in the gut. "What do you mean?" she asked, barely able to hold the tremor out of her voice. Thomas slowly turned away from the window and walked to his desk. He paused before sitting down, as if gathering his thoughts. Brooke's frustration was growing, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Your mother, Eleanor," he began, "she was different. Strong. Compassionate. She had a fire inside her that few people ever see in others. And she kept that fire hidden. Brooke's mind spun. Eleanor, her mother, had never spoken about anyone like this. She'd always been so private, so guarded. Brooke had never known her to have a secret life. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas leaned forward, his hands resting on the polished wood of his desk. "We were close once. Very close. But she disappeared from my life for reasons I never understood. She told me she was pregnant with a child that would change everything. But she vanished." Brooke's breath caught in her throat. "What? What do you mean, vanished? Where did she go?" Thomas's eyes softened, just for a moment, as memories flickered across his face. "She left because of me. Because she couldn't be with someone like me, not after what happened. The life I lead, it was too dangerous, too unstable. She wanted a different future for you. A safer one." Brooke stood frozen, her legs feeling weak beneath her. "So, you're saying you are my father?" The words sounded almost surreal as she said them. Thomas nodded slowly, as if he had been waiting for her to catch up. "Yes. I am. And I've spent the last 28 years wondering what happened to you both. Wondering if I'd ever get the chance to make things right." The revelation hit Brooke like a wave crashing against the shore, overwhelming her with a mix of disbelief, anger, and something else. Something she couldn't quite name yet. "All these years. I didn't even know you existed," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "And now you just show up, why? Why now?" Thomas's expression shifted, the mask of control slipping for the first time. "I had to wait. I had to wait until you were old enough to understand. Until I could explain. And ask for forgiveness." Brooke's mind raced, the flood of emotions threatening to consume her. Her mother, her father, the years she had spent alone, not knowing any of this. But there was one thing she knew for sure, her life would never be the same again. Brooke sat down in the chair across from Thomas, her body feeling heavy, as though the weight of a lifetime's worth of unanswered questions had finally settled onto her shoulders. The office felt too big, the glass windows offering an empty view of a city she'd never seen before, yet it all felt oddly small in this moment. She stared at Thomas, his eyes searching hers, waiting for some kind of reaction, some kind of sign. But what was she supposed to feel? Shock? Anger? A sense of betrayal? Or maybe she should feel relieved. After all, the answers she had been looking for all these years had finally arrived. But they weren't simple answers. They were complicated. Painful. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel right now," Brooke said softly, breaking the silence that had settled between them. Her voice trembled with emotion, but there was clarity in her words. "I spent my whole life wondering who you were, why my mom never told me about you. And now that I know, I still don't know how to process it." Thomas nodded, understanding in his expression. "I get it. I'm not asking for forgiveness today. I'm not even asking for a second chance. That I wanted you to know the truth. That's all." Brooke inhaled deeply, her gaze drifting away from him. She thought of her mom, Eleanor, and the way she'd spent her life protecting Brooke from whatever pain this truth would bring. But now, Brooke realized, her mother had made a choice. A choice to give her daughter the life she had wanted for her, one free from the complications of the past. The silence between them lingered, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was as if they were both waiting for something to happen next. "I've spent so many years alone," Brooke continued, her voice stronger now, wondering if there was more to my story. If there was a part of me that I didn't know. And maybe there is, now that I know about you. But I need time. I need time to process all of this. I need time to decide what happens next." Thomas didn't try to interrupt. He didn't try to convince her to forgive him or to start over. He simply nodded. "I understand. I'll give you all the time you need. I just want you to know I'm here. Whenever you're ready. Brooke stood up, her legs feeling steadier than before. Thank you, she said, her voice quiet but sincere. Thank you for being honest with me. As she walked toward the door, she paused and turned back to him. You don't have to be a stranger anymore, you know. We don't have to have it all figured out today. But maybe one day. We'll try. Thomas smiled, a sad but hopeful expression on his face. I'd like that, he said softly. Brooke stepped out of the office, the cool city air hitting her like a rush. She didn't have all the answers yet, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was moving forward. One step at a time. The past was no longer a weight around her neck. She could choose how to carry it from here. And that choice. That was hers alone. As Brooke walked through the crowded streets of San Francisco, a strange peace settled over her. The weight that had been pressing down on her chest for so long seemed to lift, slowly but surely. She didn't have all the answers, but something had shifted inside her, a new understanding, a new perspective. The conversation with Thomas hadn't been what she expected. It hadn't been some grand reunion or emotional breakthrough. Instead, it was a quiet moment of truth, one that didn't promise any easy solutions. But in that moment, she realized something important. Hearing the truth was the first step toward healing, not just for her, but for him, too. For years, Brooke had wondered about the father she'd never known. She had spent so much time thinking that knowing him would fill some void in her life, that it would somehow make her whole. But now, she understood that healing wasn't about finding someone else to fill the gaps, it was about forgiving, understanding, and accepting the parts of her life that had been left unexplained. She thought about her mother, Eleanor, and the sacrifices she'd made. The choices she had made to protect Brooke from a world she felt wasn't ready for her. She could never have known what Brooke's life would look like without him in it. She only wanted her daughter to be safe, to have a chance at a different future. And now, Brooke had that chance. A chance to decide who she was, to decide what her past meant to her, and to decide what her future could look like. Forgiveness. That was the lesson. Brooke didn't know if she was ready to call Thomas Dad. She didn't know if they would ever have the kind of relationship she had once dreamed about. But she knew she didn't have to hold on to the anger or the confusion anymore. She could forgive. Not because he deserved it, but because she deserved peace. She knew there would be more questions, more moments of doubt, and probably more difficult conversations in the future. But she also knew that she was stronger now. Stronger for having faced the truth. Stronger for having the courage to walk through the unknown and ask for answers, even when they were hard to hear. As Brooke boarded the bus back to Arizona, she smiled to herself. The journey wasn't over, but she had taken the first step. She had given herself the gift of closure, and that was the most powerful thing she could offer herself. Because sometimes, the hardest thing we have to do is let go of the past and embrace the future. And when we do that, we find something more precious than any answer we could have imagined. We find the freedom to heal.